Good evening. Welcome to this regular meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Education. We'll call the meeting to order. We have
the best.
All right.
Here for.
Well, we're going to welcome our outstanding ROTC unit to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And Master Sergeant, if you want to introduce.
Yes, thank you, and good evening. Our new group commander, Danny Carroll.
Hello, everyone.
Chief Ben LeBlanc.
Good evening.
Vice Commander Ricky Henriquez.
Hello.
Welcome, gentlemen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen, and congratulations on your new ranks for the coming year. I know several of us, I was actually in the back of the room, so you probably didn't see me, and not for very long, but attended your award ceremony, what was it, last week, I think? Yeah, and it's great to see all the hard work all the members of our ROTC put into the community, and into the school, and your academics. So we wish you great continued success.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam Superintendent, we have some presentations.
We do, sir. Miss Kathy Blue.
Good evening.
Oh, hello, Miss Blue. How are you?
I'm great, and yourself? Well, I'm wearing a different hat this evening. And so first I would like to say I bring greetings to all from the International Reading Association, the International Literacy Association, bless you, the West Virginia Reading Association, and the local council, the Jefferson County Reading Council. Good evening.
Are you allergic to literacy?
I may have had teachers who thought so. They were wrong.
And so this evening, I would like to introduce some of my cohorts that will be assisting me later, along with all of you. Mrs. Kristen Martin, Ashley, a T.A. Lowry principal, Sue Moore, the local council president, Dr. Sherry Hetzel, member, and is supposed to be a presenter, and Alvasan Moore. I'm not sure which job she is, but I'm the treasurer of the I'm the treasurer of the local council, and we'd also like to extend a thank you to Pat Blanc, who came to our literacy leaders in April. Dr. Hetzel was not available. Well, I am the president-elect of the West Virginia Reading Association, and that means that I got to do the wonderful conference in November. And if you notice, it says, just put your finger over where it's at, but it's in White Sulphur Springs, okay? Not asking for you to foot that bill, but that's okay. So I have given you a proposal of what the conference is about, and I would like you to consider coming and supporting my efforts. And I am pretty confident Dr. Hetzel and Ms. Mahoney are coming to do a presentation on early literacy. But this evening I would like to share with you this wonderful proclamation from Governor Jim Justice. And I will just read a little bit of it. Proclamation by Governor Jim Justice. Whereas the West Virginia Reading Association is the oldest professional organization committed and dedicated to eradicating illiteracy in the Mountain State. The West Virginia Reading Association recognizes the fact it will take the efforts of all stakeholders, that's you all, and the parents back here, and those lovely students, working together to improve reading from all directions and all walks of life to make West Virginia the state we know it can be. We invite you to the conference. It's the 62nd conference of this organization. And now, the conference will feature general sessions, concurrent sessions, workshops to be presented by the international, national, regional, and local experts who will share with participants the latest trends and strategies to mobilize students and parents, all citizens, to join the effort to eradicate illiteracy. Motivating people to learn to read, promote excellence in reading, and assess the new definitions of real reading in the real world. Using the latest advances in technology. Therefore, be it resolved that I, Jim Justice, Governor of the great state of West Virginia, do by here proclaim May 2017 as Reading in All Directions Month. And it is signed by him. And so I thank you for your support of the West Virginia Reading Association. We've not been here before for a long time. And we do thank you for your participation with our literacy leaders. The Jefferson County Reading Council provides a one-day staff development with Shepherd University. And we just find that that's sometimes easier for folks to come one day versus 2 days. And it sure is easier for professional leave, and it's a lot closer. So thank you, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Mrs. Blue. Questions, colleagues, comments? Can you, what is the program? Do you work with adult literacy in the county? Tell us a little bit about.
I don't do anything with adult literacy now. When I got my ESL certificate, I did.
But do we have?
We do. We have a very robust adult literacy
Yeah.
program,
Yes, we do.
both for native English speakers
Right.
to be able to get their adult equivalency, and also we recently increased our staff through a state grant. We have the largest percentage of ESL students in the state of West Virginia, and they doubled our grant from a half-time person to a full-time person to deliver English language services to the parents of these students. And actually, I was over there a couple of weeks ago, and many of these individuals have degrees in their native countries, and so they've come here to just as part of their journey to enhance their skills here. They've worked their way through their English language classes. They're working on their business English and doing quite well. Yeah, it's a wonderful program.
ESL is a wonderful program, and we do have a TESOL program in our state, and many of our teachers belong to that. But we also have the Adult Learning Center that many of folks older than me participate in getting a GED. So literacy's every place.
Good. Great. Well, thanks for all of your efforts. Obviously, very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will be holding our adult graduation ceremonies as we always do this May as well.
Ms. Fitzwater.
Save yourselves.
Trust us, we will.
Enrollment of the school board meeting. There'll be more.
But it doesn't look like it's too long. Thank you.
At least save Ashley. Tell yourself you're saving the baby.
We already said that. We were saving Ashley. She's asleep.
Okay. So for those of you who may not be aware, Ms. Fitzwater, who is our Director of Pupil Services, had her gallbladder removed today.
Oh.
She had emergency surgery, which she found out about on Friday. So I am standing in. If you will recall, at our last board meeting, we had some discussion about our special education program, and one of the things that we said we would do is come back and speak a little bit about some of the changes that we were undergoing. First and foremost, I think anybody who's been here at any point in the last year has heard us talk about growth. It's what drove redistricting. It's what drove several of the decisions that we are making as a county, both to deal with current issues and with future issues. Well, a percentage of that growth are children with special needs. We're currently averaging about 71 students a year in terms of growth, and about 15% of those are students with disabilities. We're adding anywhere from 10 to 12 additional students with disabilities moving into the county, and then identifying more of our native population as that goes along. We are also experiencing significant increases in the population of our adult students. Unlike general education students, special education law allows students to continue to receive services from public schools through the age of 21. And we have a number of students who are increasingly staying with us as they gain additional skills. Several of the board members were at our work exploration program graduation earlier today at Jefferson High School for both the J High and Washington High students. And you saw just the sheer volume of students that we are working on with work placement, socialization skills, work habits, all of the things that our kids need to be successful. In particular, students with disabilities, the unemployment rate for adults with disabilities is significantly higher than the general population, and they need a lot of extra support to become tax-paying, contributing citizens, which is their desire. We are also seeing a significant increase in our preschool population, and as that population increases, we are also identifying a number of those. We held 125 eligibility meetings just for preschool alone for identifying students with disabilities this year. So as our population grows, certainly both the number and percentage of students with disabilities has grown with that, and that requires additional resources on our part. So as those numbers have grown, much like our general population, one of the things that we've said is not only are we growing, but as always happens, culture changes. The needs of the students that we serve have changed as well. And that's true for students with disabilities as well. A couple of statistics that we pulled together that shows some of the larger changes, not just here in Jefferson, but more in general. We are seeing a significant increase in the number of students who require mental health support. You heard that over and over and over again in LSIC. Currently, the latest statistic from CDC is that 1 in 5 children between the ages of 3 and 17 suffer from some form of mental disorder. The percentage is much higher among students with disabilities, and our support of those students is crucial. And we have now reached a point where 1 in 68 students in the U.S. falls somewhere on the autism spectrum. That is a 30% increase from just 5 years ago. We have not seen quite a 30% increase. Our increase has been in the low 20s, but students with autism, even among the range of students with disabilities, students with autism, there's a range of different disabilities. A student with a speech-language disability may require a lower level of service and investment than a student with autism, who may require both speech-language services, socialization services, occupational therapy services, cognitive support services. There may be a whole range. And the other trend that we are seeing both locally and nationally is a significant increase in, not necessarily, I don't know that the level of medical need in students has increased, but that population of students is increasingly being served in the schools rather than in homes and in hospitals. So students who have to be tube fed, students who have colostomy bags, students who have heart conditions. We have a number of students who have full-time one-on-one nursing care. And you've seen several of those programs. T.A. Lowry is one of the centers that we have where students require a great deal of additional medical support. Students who perhaps previously would have been deemed too fragile to attend public school. It is very much their right to do so, and we very much support that right to do so. It does, however, require a good deal of additional resources on our part. So all of those trends are coming together to sort of push us to make some changes to our model. So that's the population that we have and where it's going, and I think it's very helpful. And one of the things that Ms. Fitzwater wanted to make sure was clearly understood is there's a set of expectations for these students in terms of what the state and the federal government, and quite frankly, ethically and morally, we should expect of ourselves in terms of outcomes for these students. If you look statistically at what we're expected to do, the state measures annually our performance on a number of goals related to students with disabilities, and these are a few of those. The first two relate to statewide proficiency. The first one, the expectation is that on English language arts assessments, at least 46.9% of our students with disabilities will successfully master those. On mathematics, it's 48.9%. We currently do not meet those standards, which is a source of frustration, quite frankly. We are one of the highest performing school districts in this entire state, and for there to be such a large gap for our students with disabilities speaks to our need to really do less segregation of those students. Quite frankly, we've had a fairly self-contained system in which we've segregated those students and have not both placed them in collaborative classes and placed supportive services in the highest performing level so that we're pushing those students to obtain the highest possible academic gains. One of those that certainly ties into 5A, where the expectation from the state is at least 62.6% of your students spend at least 80% of their day in the general education classroom. We have outstanding teachers. They are certified in their content area. They've studied for years. They work regularly to increase their knowledge base. Those are where our students need to be. We have students with disabilities who need additional support, both with mechanisms for input and mechanisms for output, but the content they have to learn is the same. We don't change the content. We simply change the way that they receive it and then the way that they give it back to us. But the standards are the same for those students. There's not a separate set of standards. So they should be served to the greatest extent possible in general education. That also ties into 5C. When we struggle to do that, when we struggle to have the right resources in county to fit student needs, unfortunately what happens is we end up having to place them outside of the system. So the state's guideline is that no more than 1.4% of our special education population should be served in a separate school or residential facility. We do not meet that requirement. We have a significant percentage, almost double that, of students with disabilities who are placed in residential or day treatment facilities because we do not have the programming to meet their needs. And some of the changes that we are going to talk about are changes to attempt to remedy that. Those students are ours. And to the extent possible, if there's any way for us to educate them, they should be here in their community with their friends, with their family. They should be educated as close to home as possible and with their peers. The next two are, the next one is about our early childhood program, and that in our preschool program, at least 31.8% of our students with IEPs should attend a general education preschool program. We do meet that criteria. We have a very robust preschool program, and we've worked very hard to have a number of collaborative programs within that. And then finally, the percent of our students who leave us that had IEPs, who then go on to higher ed, post-secondary training program, competitive employment, the state expects that to be at 66%. We are close to that. We have struggled. We've brought our percentage up slightly. One of the struggles that we have is contacting individuals. Once they leave school, it's sometimes hard to track them down. They don't always want to come back and talk to us, but we have to get those statistics. So those are both the programmatic expectations and really sort of our ethical expectations as a school system for what we're doing with students with disabilities. So to that point, we are shifting many of the resources that we had previously. And if you will recall, this was tied to a previous meeting in which you looked at several sort of general special education positions, and those were RIF'd, and you received a notice attached to your board minutes that showed what position all of those shifted into. Number one, I want to be very, very clear. We RIF'd absolutely no positions. Those positions simply morphed into different programming positions. And number two, we were judicious in that all of those positions are currently filled by substitutes. None of them are positions in which we currently have a full-time regular employee. So we're not requiring anyone who's currently working in one special education program, we're not forcing them to go and work in another special education program. Those are positions that were unfilled. We have a substitute in them when we have an opportunity to change those into something that is more directly aligned to the student needs that we see. Okay? So first and foremost, we will be adding a program at the middle school to support students with behavioral disorders. It will be located at Wildwood Middle School, and it will be under the direction of a newly hired board-certified behavioral analyst. For those of you not necessarily familiar with BCBA, that is the highest credentialing in the area of behavior that an individual can have. And the good news is that not only are we hiring someone contractually short-term to fill that role, we also put out, we think it's important for us to invest in our own staff. So we put out an application to our special education staff and said, if you are interested in becoming a BCBA, we will pay your tuition and your books. It's about a $5,000 program. And if we do, you promise to commit to us that once you finish the program, you will work for us for the next 3 years, or you will pay us back. We had the attorneys review it and the state said, wow, that's an interesting idea. We haven't had anyone do that, but you're right, it's legal. And we said, thank you very much. So we had an application system and a rubric, and we've had 2 successful individuals who have signed a legally binding agreement to begin those classes. They should complete them within 2 years, and then they owe us a minimum of 3 years of service, or they will repay the investment in their tuition. And I think that's a good model for us. We're a small system. We're not necessarily going to be able to lure people away from the Fairfaxes and the Loudons of the world, although I think if they came here, they would. But I think we invest in our own folks, and we grow them, and we put the time and money and energy into them. As my grandfather would say, you dance with the girl who brung you. You know, they've been here, they've been doing the work, invest in them. Another program that the staffing changes that you see will add is the addition of what the state deems a PMI room for students with significant cognitive disabilities at Charlestown Middle School. We had a rather large class moving up from TA Lowry, and we felt we needed to split that class to meet the needs of those students adequately. They have a great deal of equipment needs and staffing needs in terms of aides in those classrooms in order for them to meet all of their IEP goals. We are also moving the program for students with behavioral disorders from TA Lowry to North Jefferson to create a K-5 program. We had a K-2 program in one space and a 3-5 program in another, and it was fairly disruptive to move kids back and forth. So we will also have the BCBA co-located in those 2 places, North Jefferson and Wildwood Middle School, supporting those 2 programs, as we have an increased number of students with behavioral issues. We will also be adding, and this has been, Ralph and his staff have had a lot of fun with this, we have this very interesting little place called the Lolly House up at Blue Ridge. And we are actually converting that currently unused space into a post-secondary program for our kids in transition, both to teach them life skills. They will be using that as here is how you procure housing, here is how you do self-care, here's how you apply for a position, here's how you arrange for transportation, here is some job shadowing, here are internships. It is basically, we need to give you your best opportunity to be successful after school. We need to make sure that our rates of placement and employment for students with disabilities are high. These individuals are a part of our community. They need to be contributing taxpayers, and it's our responsibility to give them the best opportunity to do that. So that program will be added and staffed, particularly with the large numbers of 18 through 21-year-old students that we are seeing graduating and then returning back to our program once they walk across the stage for additional skills. And finally, a program that we're pretty excited about. You've heard, and you heard a lot in our LSIC meetings about many of the addiction and domestic violence issues that we have here in the Eastern Panhandle. We've met several times with Mr. Dougherty and his staff and the staff in Martinsburg and talked about the need for programming that supports students as they struggle with fairly traumatic domestic lives. And we went out to the faculties and asked who felt like they were ready to undertake this work. There is a specific process and training that one must go through to become a trauma-informed care organization. And Driftwood Elementary was one of the groups that took this on, and I think it was very telling when we had our principals meeting at the end of last year in December, and we were talking about addiction issues, and we were creating the mental health brochure that you now see on our website. And we talked about some of the misperceptions in this community about addiction, and Driftwood is known as a fairly affluent area, and Kelly Osborne stood up and volunteered. She had had 3 parent overdoses in the 2 weeks leading up to the Christmas holiday. So it is not restricted to one area of our county or one socioeconomic group. It is definitely a widespread issue. And so we are going carefully and thoughtfully about how we train an organization to become trauma informed. What's the best way to train our staff? What's the best way for us to support our staff as they do this work? We are still working through a program with our partners over at Harpers Ferry Medical to bring in counseling interns for our teachers to do a once-a-month session with them to help them de-stress. It's a lot for them to be in these classrooms day after day and to see these children suffer, to see the same kid that's come to school 3 days in a row, same clothes, they're not eating, and a lot of people get into this profession to save the world. They just do. And realistic or unrealistic though it may be, and sometimes they just hit a wall when they just can't. And part of our work is not just supporting kids and finding programs for kids, and we spend a lot of time on that, but we really have gotten to the point where we have to focus a lot on how do we support our people who support the kids. And that's becoming an increasing point of focus for us. So sort of what's next from this, as I noted, we will have 2 additional BCBAs in our county. We have had 2 additional schools volunteer after the initial implementation from Driftwood to become trauma-sensitive schools and to go through the training and the certification for that. We are delighted that the governor has now signed the calendar bill, which will allow us up to 5 additional days per year, where we can use minutes rather than days. We have a calendar committee. We've already started working with Morgan and Berkeley on that. And we think that our ability to provide additional support to our staff is going to be crucial. And long-term, several of these things are laying the basis for one day I would like to not sign a check to Aurora, quite frankly, for 6 figures per kid per year. We are paying their staff to increase their knowledge base. We're paying them to increase their facility capabilities. And we have that capability here. We do. We have to build it, and we have to show families results in order for them to be willing to bring their children back to us. And some of these programmatic changes, the staff development changes, the BCBA additions are things that will help us lay the foundation for that. We hope within the next 3 years to have a Jefferson Autism Academy that's fully functioning and offers the same high-quality services that you find in private day treatment facilities. So I will, noting that I am, although I have been before a director of special education, I am not the director of special education for Jefferson. So I will entertain any questions you have, although some of them may receive an answer of, I will ask Cindy when she's off drugs. So just special note.
Well, Dr. Gibson, thank you. First of all, please express our wishes for a speedy recovery to Ms. Fitzwater.
Yes, sir, I certainly will. Thank you.
And also our appreciation to her for the work that's gone into this presentation. It sheds light on a critically important part of our mission, and I think gives us a better sense of where we are, what we're doing well, and what we need to do better at.
Yes, sir.
Questions, comments? I won't probably defer this one to Cindy, but some of the goals that the state has set for us in terms of assessment as well as percentage who are in the class, I mean, do we know? I'd be curious, like 46%, how do they come at that
Yes, sir.
as their objective?
I do not know how West Virginia in particular does theirs. I know from my work in other states that the federal government sets a guideline and a goal, and they give them X number of years to reach it. And what most systems do is they take a snapshot, and then they take the federal government's goal, and they say, okay, I have 5 years, and whatever the gap is, they divide it by 5 and say you got to gain this much every year. What I will be very interested in, however, is, as you've seen, this is the last year of the WVSG. I mean, it's going away. They have not yet finished writing the RFP for the new assessment, so they haven't even put out the call for what the new test is going to be. I would love it if they would even procure a new test before school starts next year. So we have no idea what it will be, what the scoring criteria will be, so it's another baseline. So I'm not sure how valid their percentages are going to be, because they're based off of a test that these past 2 weeks are the last time that we'll take it.
And in your opening remarks, you mentioned that, and I wasn't clear whether I heard this right, the growth of 71 students. You said 15% of that growth that
Yes,
has
sir.
special needs?
Yes, sir. And actually, it's slightly higher among those. We are averaging 71 students per year in terms of growth over the last 5 years. We are sitting at 14.6, 14.7% students with disabilities. Although
Of our total population?
Of our total population, although one of the things that we've seen is of students coming in from outside of the district, it has been a higher percentage than our native population of students with disabilities. Partially, and I don't have, this is pure anecdotal, I don't have any objective evidence for this, particularly individuals who come from the interior of the state, our service level for students with disabilities is significantly higher than what most other systems can provide. And we've had parents who've come to us and said, oh, well, we looked around, so we came to you. So I think that's partially a perception.
I just had one comment. I appreciate the program for the transitioning adults, especially after what we saw today. But having worked, DRS I know does a great job, but the issue with that is that their transition of personnel takes so long. So you have a student, and if they don't see the students until senior year, and then all of a sudden that person drops out and leave, it takes 6 months to a year to train a new person, then you have no one. You have just students after students after students who have nothing. Then they don't know what to do. So I just really appreciate the fact that we will actually have a program to address those needs and look to fulfill them as individuals, because that's what they want. And maybe basically to use DRS as give us a scholarship for this student needs that, things of that nature, but it's the right thing to do, so.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
DRS is actually also under something called order of selection. Anytime they have budget cuts, they change the order of selection is who gets served first, and it's typically not our high school students because they're already getting something, and DRS serves an adult population who oftentimes, other than them, gets nothing. And so by order of selection, they'll often choose those individuals first, and then they'll get to us when they can. So that does make things difficult.
Other questions, comments? You alluded to the fact that I think, and the board has mentioned this on several occasions, the LSIC meetings. The one issue that I think we all took away from all of the LSIC meetings was the growing needs of the mental health needs of the students. And just simply say that I suspect our teachers, as they were getting their education and their licensure, they probably didn't receive much training on meeting those mental health needs, but it certainly has not stood in the way of them stepping up and trying to figure out how to meet them. And we know that demands a lot of extra from our teachers, but we just want to recognize and thank you, because we know that, and we certainly saw that from every school that we visited with, that you just figure out how to try to help that individual student and help make a difference. And it's not part of your job description, but you're doing it, and it's important, and we appreciate it. So,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Do you have any other super comments tonight?
Only two. Number one, I'm very grateful for the fact that it is Teacher Appreciation Week.
Yes.
I sent a notice out to the teachers this morning, and I have seen many a luncheon being provided and gifts going to school, and I think we have a wonderful supportive community, which I greatly appreciate. And also, it's nice to see Jefferson High School here, and a shout out to them. I went on Sunday and had a lovely experience with my son at the very last show of the year, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And so thank you to them. They put on a wonderful show. The students and the volunteers were just made it a great experience. So if you have it, it's the best $5 you'll spend all year. So it was a great show.
Great. Approval of the minutes of the last regular board meeting. Do we have a motion? So moved. Second?
Second.
Any revisions, clarifications? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Any citizens' comments? Ms. Harder? Consent agenda.
Yes, sir. There are no changes on the consent agenda. I will simply point out that you have the attachment that was in your packet that showed the crossover between the old special education positions and the new, so that you could see that there was a match for every single one of those.
Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any questions on the consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Unfinished business.
None.
New business.
New business.
Mr. Dingus.
We are here just to ask to go out to bid, and again, we're just going out to bid at this point for HVAC services. We have at this point 2 techs that work all day throughout the county, and they also are supported by a team of people back at the company that we're using today, Southern Air. And some of the things that we will be asking for and always have asked for is that have a certified person in Daikin and LG because we have so many, and that they allow us to buy the parts. This saves us a fortune. It saves us a fortune every day. Our lady, Judy Slusher, buys every part that we need. We don't buy a part from somebody else, then get jacked up on the price, and then, get our part at a jacked up price. We get it at cost, our cost in that situation. It'll be a 3-year contract. Well, it'll be a 1-year contract with 2 extra years possible at any time you can get out of the contract as it goes. As we always have for the last 10 years.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve putting a bid out for HVAC?
So moved.
Second.
Questions?
I'll just have to comment, since we went with these companies, our service and our maintenance of our machines was just improved greatly. So, and we don't have the number of people nor the money to send our own people to get trained in these areas, and it makes a big difference.
And so then you'll be bringing back,
Yes.
once you evaluate the respondents to the
Yeah.
RFP.
We'll put the RFP in the newspaper.
Ralph, do we include anything on there regarding energy efficiency? Regarding a service from them or any advisement from them on it? I know that you recently had someone come in free of charge and do an energy efficiency review for us. Is there anything in our contract regarding energy efficiency, or is it strictly repair?
There is controls. Controls are in our contract, and they run our controls for us if we need to. They are also, like for example, over at Washington, we have 2 electric boilers. And if both electric boilers come on at the same time, the peak skyrockets high. And we pay on that peak for an entire month. That peak is not just one time. So we make sure, and they've controlled this, actually went from about $60,000 a month when we first started Washington to about $40,000 a month in electric bill, just because we did that. And we balanced those out so that we never hit that peak that high again, because they don't come on at the same time. If one is staging, we'll let one stage up and then turn it off, and then let the next one stage up. And it works fine in that situation. But like I said, when we started Washington, we had that major problem. But today, we were running really well. And most of Jonathan's discussions lately are exactly that. How can we save us more money? How can we, put in a better unit? And we've done so much of that. That's why the Daikins are there. That's why the LGs are there. They have a SEER of 26. And having a SEER of 26, that's twice the normal SEER. The normal SEER on a HVAC unit that you buy at your house is 13 to 15 someplace, and these are at 26. They don't have any loss because they also have 3 pipes, 2 pipes. It takes a real special person to be able to do that. But the Southern Air guy, Jonathan, is certified by both companies to even start these. So it's going to be hard to find those kind of people. But they're out there, and we'll put it in the newspaper, and we hope we get some really good bids.
So under one of these contracts, if they come in to repair and their recommendation is that particular unit is beyond repair, then do they recommend a replacement, or do we do a separate evaluation and RFP for potential replacement?
We have them give us a suggestion is what they want to replace it with. We sit down as a team and decide whether that's what we're supposed to be replacing it with, or why that one replacement of the other. Again, we buy the unit. So we're buying that unit, even the big units, if we're replacing. We're buying it cost, our cost. Not through them at cost, our cost from Johnson Control, who owns York, or one of those companies that. So we buy it direct, and they will install at their price, and their price is much cheaper than you're ever going to get installed by anybody else.
Thanks. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Title change?
Yes, sir. As I had noted to the board earlier, last year we created, and this board had a great deal of discussion, and Ms. Ross was involved and presented to the board, a Dean of Students position that was intended to serve at-risk students at Jefferson High School. We had looked at the demographics of that school and the numbers of that school and determined that we needed someone for our at-risk students, reduce our dropout rate, and work out of our Bright Bite system and take the high-risk students who were in the red and in the yellow and help reduce those predominantly for the support for the students, also because that is one of the leading measurements for the grading system for the state, is how well you take at-risk students and you help reduce those risk factors and help them become successful. And at the time, both the board's communication, our communication with Human Resources, our attorney's communication with Human Resources was that was a student support position. It was not an administrative position. As sometimes happens in human enterprises, there was an error in Human Resources and it was accidentally posted as an administrative position. As you will recall, when that was brought to our attention, we then came back to the board. We reposted that position as a non-administrative position. We re-interviewed we interviewed everyone from the second posting. That job was filled. And then we currently have a pending grievance based on the title of that position. And the crux of the grievance is that a Dean of Students position is inherently administrative. Now, my preference in having a discussion with legal is, as much as I love our legal counsel, I do not want to write them any checks. I would much rather spend money on children than on attorneys. So my discussion and advisement to the board is that they entertain a change in title to this position to Student Support Facilitator. There would be absolutely no change in the current qualifications of the position, absolutely no change in job responsibilities, absolutely no change in pay. The only requested change would be to change the title from Dean of Students to Student Support Facilitator.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Questions?
So this will need to be reposted?
No, sir.
It's a new position.
No, sir. It is the exact same position with a different title.
I just think this I'm not comfortable with this at all, and I think it has issues of may have issues of transparency of this board all over it, to be truthful with you.
And certainly we could withdraw that and come back with our legal counsel to give the board additional information. If we have no, other than the pending grievance, we have no timeline. We could bring this back to you at the next board meeting if the board so chooses. Certainly, I want you to be comfortable with your decision.
The student support facilitator, walk me through kind of what the day looks like. Are they working with a kind of, I hate to use the word pre-screened, but if their focus is on at-risk students, so they're dealing with students that have already kind of had a certain set of variables in their behavior, and versus being available to all the students? Or if I'm a student and I have some need, I go see this person versus a counselor?
It's a bit of both and.
Okay.
So the activities that the current Dean of Students has been working on so far have been facilitating school expectations work group, and so that would be work that impacts all of the student body, looking at facilitating conversation among representative staff to identify common expectations within the school, to develop some consistency in terms of how we conduct disciplinary procedures, both in terms of positive reinforcements as well as consequencing students. A lot of research and to some degree some professional development for our staff around those areas, but also working with identified students, particularly those who have chronic attendance problems. So those are ones that automatically rise to the top because with chronic absenteeism comes, other ways of not being successful in the school. So working with those students and their parents and the administrative team when we're working with those students and trying to figure out what's going on. We've also developed a Targeted for Success team, and that team is administrators and counselors and the Dean of Students, and there's a referral system, and so teachers, any staff person can refer. They've got a concern about a student across any of those areas: attendance, behavior, academic performance, just, they don't seem like themselves, so perhaps mental illness, mental challenge, that's not the right word, so so the students who are having difficulties. So there's a referral system, and then the team looks at those students at each week and goes through what has happened, what could possibly happen, and what resources do we need to bring to bear to support those students. Some of those will then be referred on to our student assistance team, so our SAT process. Others, we then create a game plan, figure out who's doing what, and push out, and then come back for referral. And so those are some of the things that have happened so far. And also some social skills groups. So we have piloted a 4-week course for students, again, who can self-refer, parents can refer, or staff can refer. So we piloted that. So those are some of the things that have happened. So it's both an opportunity to work for students who are already targeted through our early warning system as being students who are at risk, as well as some of the more school-wide approaches that generally improve the culture and climate of the school and the capacity of the students to respond to all students.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So it's our position or the recommendation that all along this was the job description was of a student support and not an administrative position.
Yes, sir.
But the way the title was written, the argument was...
The argument is that title has inherent administrative
responsibilities or duties.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly if the board would like additional information, I can consult our legal counsel and return.
But in terms of our obligations under the personnel code, the HR and outside counsel are comfortable that we can address any concerns by a modification in the title of the position.
That would be affirmative, sir. Yes. In fact, I was going to mention that the board meeting at which you will approve that, it was specifically you who asked that question, is this in fact an administrator position? And it was noted at that time that it was not. And it was an error, a grave error on the part of my department with regard to the misposting of that particular position.
Okay. Any further questions? So we have a motion to approve the title change. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay. I believe it carries 4-1. Okay. Thank you. Item C, dual enrollment.
Yes, sir, Mr. Blanc.
Sure you remember earlier this year when Nicole Schaefer brought the dual enrollment initiative that Jefferson County was undergoing, and along with that came the need for a policy to set some guidelines for how we're going to do the operation of dual enrollment. So a couple of things I want to call to your attention is you have a draft policy there that one of the major changes I think is before we originally heard about the dual credit where dual enrollment, the classes would all be after school, where else students would be going over to Shepherd or Blue Ridge College, and to Dr. Gibson's initiatives. She's worked at both institutions, Blue Ridge and Shepherd, where we have some of our, I think 7 or 8 of our own teachers that indicated an interest of becoming certified college instructors. They meet the criteria of Blue Ridge Community College and Shepherd, that they would be accredited to teach at the university level, thus to be able to provide those classes on site at the school. That we have a meeting with them tomorrow, I believe that is, as far as
Wednesday.
That's it. Tomorrow. It's not Wednesday yet. Yes, but just it's an added component to the dual credit, which is nice because it would takes away the need to travel for the students to travel to a university, and also says you don't have to stay after school necessarily to take these classes. So that's an exciting addition to the dual enrollment policy of our offering for that. And the rest of the policy pretty much goes and tries to work out some of the specifics for issues that might come up as far as the credit, the grading is done on the university level, not the high school level. When students can possibly withdraw from a class, once again, a lot of that's based on the university. Tuition is paid by the family for the college level classes. There's eligibility requirements. We try not to make it too restrictive, so we're not saying that only a few elite students can go to that. They have to have a certain ACT score and have a GPA of what that college requires. Both of the universities or institutions require a different GPA for admittance, and an attendance incentive there that says basically you're in school without more than 10 unexcused absences that usually have you going to court for being absent too much. That those are some of the major guidelines we try to put into the policy, just to try to address issues of the students' transcript. College transcript is where their grade will come from. You need the official transcript to document the grade. So trying to set those guidelines up that will make a smooth transition to the dual credit classes. And so we're asking now that we could put this policy on review for 2 weeks to gather input from the community.
Thank you, Mr. Blanc. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second. Second. Questions?
I just had a couple questions. When I went through it, just trying to make some notes, the professor I know that the staff and of Blue Ridge and Shepherd had talked about the possibility, if we had enough students, to even send a professor here, like for an 8 a.m. class, since if you go on the website at Shepherd, you're not going to find many or any 8 a.m. classes there, which is how you end up at Blue Ridge.
I made that mistake once.
Yeah, exactly. But our high school kids are there early. So anyway, just wondering, because that's not in here. It says that we have the possibility for the student to be on campus. It also says the possibility to have the high school teacher teach the class, but it doesn't say anything about having a professor
on high school grounds, if that was an option we wanted to
I
utilize.
think if
Maybe
we had
it's
the
not, but-
demand, I think if we had the demand,
Right.
I think the universities would try to work with us on that. They've indicated that through there, but.
And to your point, we can edit to make that clear.
Yeah, that's all I was saying.
Because we had added on our campus, because originally, the state does have a policy, and the state's policy is the students off campus.
Right.
The students go to the university, and although we have, I think at last count, we had a little over 40 students who have done dual enrollment thus far, and we hope to have far more if we can offer it on campus for students who can't drive.
Okay, so if we could just do that, and then I had put, on there, it says it is the purpose to deliver a high-quality college experiences to high-performing high school students. I have an issue with the word high-performing, only because my IEP student took a college course and left school, took OSE, took an 8 a.m. class at Blue Ridge and came back. The other part of that policy that says you have to have a certain ACT and SAT score, neither of which he had those either. But yet he passed the class and ended up graduating from Blue Ridge and was very successful because he realized he could do college. So by, number one, saying that it has to be a high-performing student, I think in some ways is just...
I think the intent was probably to say, expect a rigorous course that's going to be more rigorous than high school, so
Right.
expect that, don't.
Yeah, I just think we need to word that a little bit.
We could even possibly
differently.
consider deleting the word high performing, those two words out of there. But,
And we certainly, it was my understanding when we had the meeting that we had added into that the ability, if a student did not have the ACT and SAT requisite scores, that they could take a placement exam. Both Shepherd and Blue Ridge offer a placement exam if you don't have or don't meet either one of those.
Yeah.
That was my understanding.
right, and I think we just covered that with our sentence that students who are denied dual enrollment may appeal the decision, and that was meant to be implied in that, and I don't think it's stated in there in that
We need
way.
to be a bit more explicit so that
Yes.
families know that if they don't have those scores, to your point,
Right. I
they
would
may.
never think he could do it.
Yeah, you would think, oh, I didn't make the cut, so I don't have, there's no other option available to me. I do think that we need to be,
And I had put a comment with that as, who do you appeal to? It doesn't say who you appeal, it said you can appeal. So am I gonna bombard the guidance counselor, the principal, like who do I appeal to? If I'm told no.
We originally had the administration in there. I don't know if if we did discuss that to the point where I'm not sure why we moved, but the administration was in there, yeah.
So we needed to add that.
Applications go to either Shepherd or Blue Ridge, and so they're the ones that approve you or don't approve you, I believe. Is that not correct?
that
So you'd have
is
to,
correct. However, I do think that we don't want, at least the board may feel differently, students navigating that system, that they don't know them. They don't know Shepherd, they don't know Blue Ridge. We'd rather have our folks sort of shepherd them, so to speak, through that process where, so yes, ultimately, it has to be the university or the college that we get to accept them, but we would like to direct students to someone in our system to be their champion and to be the person who helps them navigate that, and then who goes to the university or the college on their behalf. And
that makes sense, but it's just, we have to make sure it's clear that it's not our final
Our
say.
decision.
It's their institution, and they admit who they want to admit, so.
yes, ma'am, that's true. So we could distinguish that in that section. Yes, ma'am.
And I think these are excellent points, but we need to be also mindful of policy versus operating procedure. So you may not want to you may not want to be too prescriptive in the policy. You certainly want to make it clear that appeal is available and, to administration, but you might try it one year doing it one way and think that you might want to change it, and I'd hate for you to have to come back and modify the policy to do it.
That's a good point, thank you.
Just have an SOP to go with the policy.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And number 2, under criteria, it says overall cumulative grade point average of the higher learning institution.
Each of those had different expect. One was like 3.2, and I think one was 2.7. I think is what they wanted to see from the college.
But this is not clear. So are you saying the the cumulative grade point average.
So it's not the grade
For admission?
GPA of the higher
No,
institution, it's the GPA
it's-
of the high school but the higher is
it should-
have
it
different
should-
standards.
It should, I think,
Yeah.
yeah, it needs to say something like, you have to meet the admission GPA criteria of the admitting institution, something like that. Just needs to be clearer.
And it can be found where?
Yeah.
Like, how do you know what that is, or where can it be found? I mean, that's kind of what I would wonder. Or again, I'm calling somebody
Yeah,
else.
it could be an SOP, because it could be a
Yes.
changing
Yes, every
changing
year it
type
could
of
be
thing. I
something
think that would
different.
be a good place for an SOP to say, right now with Blue Ridge, I think was 2.7, and Shepherd might have been 3.
We could also put the links into their admissions pages that would make
Yes.
it, because
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be good.
with our new board docs policy capability, it will be online, it will be searchable, and you'll be able to link out to other institutions and documents from it, so.
All right, hold on,
And-
I had a couple more. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, while you're on eligibility, student eligibility criteria, I think number 3 is kind of unclear as well. Fewer than 10 unexcused absences per year. Is this current academic year, previous academic year, or per year that you've been in school?
We discussed that, and we thought, well, if a student has that many absences, it's necessary to put that in, because if they have that many absences, it's probably going to affect their academic ability to maintain the acceptable GPA. So, I mean, we debated whether we want to put attendance in there or not, that we threw that back and forth.
Well, regardless of how you resolve it, if you resolve it that you do want it, then I think it needs to be clear. I mean, is that 10 unexcused absences per year for every year I've been in school? Or is it for the current academic year? Is it for the previous academic year? What is it?
And this would be a good discussion with the board in that this began, the first draft of this had, let's just say, a significantly greater set of...
Six or seven.
Yes, it had thou shalt, thou shalt, thou shalt, thou shalt. And if you meet this tiny little criteria, then we shall knight you and you can go here. And we had a lot of discussion. Those just happen to be different philosophical viewpoints. And we as a system appear to be, I hope, making some shifts into, rather than placing a lot of judgment on kids up front and saying, thou shalt check all of these boxes, and then we'll give you access to prove yourself in higher level courses, that we let kids get in. We tell them up front, and we're very clear about what the expectations are, but then let folks give it a chance. So we removed a lot of criteria about thou shalt have no discipline, you should go to school every day, and you should have this high GPA, and you should have... So certainly you have to be able to withstand the rigor of the course, but there are some... We don't want to put artificial barriers in the way, so...
If you're just looking for clarification, though, I think, in the most part, we're saying, is it this school year? If a kid applies for next year, we're looking at this year's absences.
I'm
then.
fine with it being removed, that's my personal opinion, but regardless, it's not clear. And others may disagree on whether it should be a criteria or not.
We had a lot of debate about that.
We did. And I'd be very interested to see the public comment.
Yeah, so, okay, other questions?
So let me ask, going forward, we make these, do we bring it back to you so you can see what we've, how we've edited it after your comments before we put it out on review, if you vote to put it on review, or?
I think if the board votes to put it out on review, and if you can capture the comments and suggestions made tonight, you put it out. Because we'll have another opportunity to review it.
It's helpful, because school will still be in session, I think, yeah, that will be helpful.
I just had a couple more. Under parents pay fees and tuition, and they're responsible for whatnot, then underneath it says, the student has the responsibility to purchase or rent the approved textbooks or other materials. So I just thought that was kind of interesting, that the parents are going to pay fees and tuition, and the student's going to pay for the textbook. So we just need to change that verbiage there, that's all. I think it probably should say you have the opportunity to purchase or rent an approved textbook, but clearly if the parent's paying for one, the parent's probably paying for, maybe not, maybe the student will pay for the whole thing.
Good point, yeah.
But, yeah. And then underneath there, next paragraph there, or statement, the program you're going to apply, and then for the program from guidance and a recommendation from the principal or designee. I'm not quite sure what a designee is or who a designee is. Is there something that?
I think that was a safety for us. We've had, like Miss Martin, we'll have folks on maternity leave or who are out, and we have somebody who is there. They're the interim. They're not the.
Okay.
It's somebody
Basically,
forgets
whoever's
theirs
in
to the
charge.
last minute, and the principal's not in the building, and whoever we designate is there.
That can
It's a
sign
safety.
off. Okay. All right, and then a couple more. Who can take additional courses was my question. At the bottom, it says additional courses can be taken that do not meet the criteria for the West Virginia, but then again, I'm thinking to myself, like, who can take that? Would that be a place where a child like my son with the IEP, he's actually allowed to take that? So I would read down through the policy, or would I stop way up in the top that said, well, he didn't make the ACT, he didn't make the SAT, he doesn't have that GPA, so I guess he's out. So I wasn't quite sure.
The entry criteria would be the same because the university or the college sets those. I think that statement is in there to convey there may be coursework that the West Virginia Department of Education does not approve for you to receive high school credit. And what we wanted, and we had discussion about this as well, is if you as a family, you're a senior and you've met all of your credit requirements, you want to go take photography because that's your love, go take photography. West Virginia Department of Education is probably not going to give you any Carnegie unit credits for it towards your high school diploma, but go with God. If you meet all of the other criteria and you can work it into your schedule, we're sort of exploring being a little more flexible in some of these. So that portion wasn't necessarily intended to denote a greater level of flexibility about who could get in. It was meant to say there may be things that aren't actually dual enrollment because you won't get high school credit for them, because you'll need it, but we can still release you to go and take those courses.
Right, they won't cross-reference with any of our standards, content standards to our courses.
So I think that's where I was confused, because at the bottom it does say dual enrollment. Some courses do not satisfy dual enrollment. So in my mind as a parent, and even as a board member, I'm thinking we're going to offer dual enrollment. If I think dual enrollment, that means I get high school credit for it. So maybe it needs to be stated dual enrollment, and here are the classes that count for that, and other acceptable college credits for general college, however we want to, but that has to be somehow separated, that I don't think, I can take photography or something of that nature and get that.
See, after we talked about that, we're going to be changing our standards here soon with the state. It's going to be coming back and realigning them, and we can do that and coming back to, once again, I don't know if that's I think the idea of that statement was tried as saying we understand there's going to be new standards coming down.
Maybe we take a separate section and talk about the ability to get college credits that aren't mapped back to WVDE. Like, don't name them specifically, but take that out of the dual enrollment section so that it doesn't lend itself for you to think, I'll get high school credit. And then we could have a separate section of the policy that we'll address later that says, college credit courses or we'll come up with some title there, but that talks about we'll release you, but you're not getting high school credit for this because it doesn't map back to WVDE. They haven't approved these courses.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
And then last but not least, I promise, at the end, when it talks about GPA, I'm wondering how it affects your high school GPA.
You get the letter grade, we say there, right?
So whatever letter grade you get in the college course, that then will be counted as a 3.0, 4.0, 2.0, depending on where you are.
That's my understanding, right? Because we're not going to give the percent. They won't get a percent grade.
Okay. Because I think like some colleges are a 10-point grading scale. So
Yeah,
if
but
they
we're still
give
going to,
you-
right, we're going to
So-
adhere to the college grade there. That's the
Okay.
grade that the student will get, yeah.
Okay.
what's on that transcript, that college transcript.
So you get a 92 in Stengel's class, but you get a 90 and you still get the college A at Shepherd. I like it.
I'd like it too if I could get an A out of a Stengel. I'm feeling pretty darn good about myself.
That's awesome. She's a great teacher.
She's a damn good teacher.
Yeah, she is.
My turn?
Yes, go ahead, sorry.
Page 1?
I'm glad I'm not the only one. No, it's
Well-
good, thank you, Pat.
You just brought up another question. With that grade, is it going to be a weighted grade, the way that AP classes and honors classes are in the high school?
Question.
And actually, weight typically applies to GPA, not to your letter. I mean, there's no weighting a letter grade. Do you see what I'm saying? It's you have to. If you're going to weight it, you get you're weighting the. Right.
But an A in an AP class is a 4.5. No, a 5.
5. Yeah,
Basically
5.0.
saying it.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just something that we need to.
That is something that needs to be addressed. You're right. You're right.
And then.
Because that would make a difference.
But if you're going by the college, the way they grade, they don't grade that way as far as I know.
I know, but even still,
you,
we don't.
You could argue, I mean, well.
But those are.
That's what we're in policy, so we'll take that argument away once the policy is
Yeah,
written.
they're supposed to be equivalent things.
Right.
Right.
Because you're getting college credit for both of them.
You're getting
Right.
college credit, so you
Except-
could argue that they're
Right.
comparable, but
Except
let,
then-
however you all decide to do that and put it in here, and then
Yeah.
we'll see
It
it
just needs to be
when it comes
addressed.
back.
Right. You're right. It does.
And then my second and last question is,
She's making me look bad.
I'm trying. Concise. We recently were ranked, both high schools, in the top 10 in the state, which is excellent. One of the factors going into that weighting are the AP classes. I'm a huge believer in the dual enrollment because it lets a student show their ability over a whole semester as opposed to 3 hours in one day on one test. Is this going to hurt our statewide ratings, or is there a way to factor in dual enrollment classes or petition to have them factored in addition to AP classes?
First and foremost, the rankings that you saw are U.S. News and World Report. They're external. I just want to. I know you know this. Stay in the audience.
Sorry.
So those criteria aren't set by either the state of West Virginia or Jefferson County Schools. And to your point, they are entirely weighted upon graduation rates, which we do control, which are common across. They use a common weighted formula. AP participation and AP pass rates, they do not count or take into consideration dual enrollment. So if we see a shift of students away from AP and towards dual enrollment, it will have an effect on those rankings. And that has been coming from a larger system where we had both. We had those, as well as an IB diploma program. It was a fairly vociferous argument that they were placing a single type of college credit criteria because the whole thing is supposed to be a measure of college and career readiness. Yet, they only utilize AP. They do not utilize dual enrollment as one of their measurements.
Many years ago in our county, we had, Mr. Osborne probably remembers, we had dual credit, and that was when we started to up our AP program. Then I think that was probably around when we started saying, hey, we're going to put more emphasis on AP, not necessarily for grading. I don't think it was necessarily for grading our school system, but we're going to put a lot more emphasis on AP programs and doing dual credit, because at one time we had some Shepherd teachers that would come over to Jefferson. That was quite a few years ago. So, Mr. Osborne might remember that, or maybe.
So we need to put.
Your point is well taken. We need to, but we need to make sure that people understand that as well publicly.
So, Ms. Skinner, the universities have this complaint about U.S. News and World Report every year that the criteria is unfair to my particular university, and my ranking ended up, I went from 15 to 25, but, you didn't take into account that I did X. And so they go and meet with the editors every year and try to make their case, and we'll be happy to take Dr. Gibson to meet the editor of the education section of the U.S. News and World Report. And
I
can
did
think
email
of
them
no
and
one.
complain.
I can
Because I
think
think Washington should be 10.
I can think of no one who would be more effective in a one-on-one meeting than Dr. Gibson. Be happy to take you to their office in Georgetown, and you can make the case.
That would be great. I did email them because I had some frustrations with their website and some of the criteria that they used.
I've taken several university presidents in to make similar arguments.
Were they successful?
Sometimes. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, sometimes.
Feel better.
Yeah.
And the only other thing we need to check on is, I believe in one of our funding steps, we receive funding for AP classes, or however many kids are taking AP classes. For some reason, I remember that's somewhere.
We get funding to send them to the AP training.
Well, we also, there is income that comes from the number of students we have enrolled in those classes.
Is it like up to a certain amount, we get a certain amount, or is it per student? Do you know?
I thought it was per student, but I haven't dealt with the financial part.
Well, we need to know the answer to that.
So, well, because I'm wondering if that's the case, then that's the next place we go after the state for, is to
Yeah.
change that
Right.
in the legislation, that funding source
Yeah, if they're
specifically has to
encouraging us to do
include
this.
dual enrollment.
Yeah.
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 I mean, that seems like it'd be an easy amendment.
Let me look and see if it's just AP, if it's honors and AP, or let me.
Go ahead, Mark,
I just wanted
please,
some
on
proof.
behalf of this side of the table.
I have water.
What you have in that bottle?
It's clear.
You didn't get the special bottle, did you?
No, I didn't get that.
Those are all things, and one of the things is, as we grow, what I hope is that, we'll have more options. We should have, if we get an extra 70, 80, and eventually we'll be getting another 100 kids a year. If 10 of them choose AP and 10 of them choose dual enrollment, that's great. We're still growing.
Absolutely.
We're
Yeah.
just, every
And we're
option to get
providing
to every
options
single kid.
for students. So, yeah. Other questions? So we have a motion, to approve placing dual enrollment out for review with reflecting some of the additional recommendations made here tonight.
Sure.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Blanc and
Yes.
Dr. Gibson. We think this is a exciting next chapter for our high school students. We expect an executive session regarding personnel and land.
Land.
Any action?
No, sir.
Okay, so, okay. Well, we'll consider a motion to
Motion to adjourn.
Executive session.
executive session.
For executive
Yeah,
session.
motion to move into executive session.
Try.
All those, nice. By the way, I would have seconded that motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. We'll take a 5-minute break and retire to executive session.